Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Piers Robinson. I'm the Research Director for the International Centre for 9/11 Justice. And today we are holding a symposium on geopolitics and the war on Palestine, titled Genocide and Empire. Now, IC 911, for those of you who aren't familiar with this organization, it's a non-profit organization which has been set up in order to research and investigate issues surrounding 9/11, the 9/11 event. As you can see there on the screen at the moment, we are engaged in a variety of activities, both public education, getting information out about what happened on 9/11. At a recent film, Peace, War on 9/11, on the late Graham McQueen, which people can view for free. We're also engaged in activism and supporting, for example, the Campbell family in their quest to gain a new inquest into the death of Jeff Campbell on 9/11. And we're also involved in facilitating and encouraging research into 9/11 and 9/11 related issues. And we have the Journal of 9/11 Studies hosted at IC 911. Now, one of our remits is to understand better 9/11, to educate people about what happened on 9/11, but also to look at the consequences of 9/11. And obviously, 9/11 itself was a key initiating point for a series of regime change wars in the international system, in the Middle East primarily. And you can see there on the slide, just as a little reminder here of the relevance of 9/11 to what we're seeing today in the Middle East, in Israel and Gaza. These are two documents produced by or released by the Chilcot Inquiry in the UK, and communications between Tony Blair and President George Bush. And in the top there, you can see discussion about Syria and Iran, and a discussion about when it is sort of optimum to engage each of these countries militarily. And the quote there is, well, if we're going to topple Saddam, if that's our priority, then we better do that with Syria and Iran in favor or acquiescing rather than hitting all three at once. And what you see there, obviously, is a discussion about the regime change wars, which we know were being planned prior to 9/11, and which are documented in the Chilcot Inquiry and from other people who've spoken out about that. This was the planning that was going on in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, within months, within weeks of that. You can see below, there's another sort of choice quote from the same document, Tony Blair talking about the Middle East being set for catastrophe, again, immediately in the aftermath of 9/11. And this really sort of goes to highlight the importance of 9/11, I think, in terms of setting the scene for what we're seeing now in the Middle East. What the conflict and the violence and the potential for escalation we have at the moment is very much part of events which were set in a process which was set in train around 9/11. So this is highly relevant for us as an organization to be looking at. We want to look at 9/11. We want to look at the consequences and also help people understand events today, through an understanding of 9/11. And so this is what we have today. Today we've brought together a fantastic lineup of experts to speak about the current situation between Palestine and Israel, in the situation in the Middle East. We have Professor Richard Falk, who is an expert on international legal matters. He was UN Rapporteur for Palestine in the United Nations. We will also have Atif Kubersi, who's a professor of economics, emeritus professor from McMaster University. Again, worked in the United Nations. He's going to be talking us through some of the resource and economic components of the conflict that we see in the Middle East. We have Kevin Ryan, who's a board member of IC 911, International Centre for 9/11 Justice. He's a 9/11 whistleblower and currently editor of the Journal of 9/11 Studies. He's going to be talking about, in conceptual terms, structural deep events and state crimes against democracy. We are also going to have Aaron Good, who's Dr. Aaron Good, who runs the American Exception podcast. His thesis, his PhD, was on American exception hegemony and the tripartite state. And he's going to be talking about understanding 9/11, understanding October 7 and the current situation in the Middle East potentially as a deep state event. And finally, we will have Vanessa Beeley, who is an independent journalist, who has deep and rich expertise on the Middle East, and she'll be talking about the broader geopolitical picture and where things are going in the Middle East. And we will finish with a roundtable discussion. And